a medieval European royal castle during a violent storm in the year 1277, late 13th century High Middle Ages, painted in a detailed historical painting style. A lonely traveller wearing a heavy wool cloak stands on a muddy path. Rain falling around him, ancient stone towers glowing with torchlight, dark clouds and rolling thunder above the castle, realistic medieval atmosphere, oil painting texture, a 1277 European medieval kingdom landscape, a massive royal stone castle on a hill surrounded by rainy fields, painted as a classical medieval oil painting, knights, farmers, and travellers walking near the fortress walls wearing authentic 13th century clothing, wooden carts, horses, muddy roads, stormy sky with lightning, historical painting style, a medieval traveller approaching a royal castle gatehouse in Europe during the year 1277, illustrated as a detailed Renaissance-inspired historical painting. The traveller wears a wet wool cloak and leather boots. Castle guards in chainmail armour stand beneath a wooden gate. Rainwater flowing over stone walls, torches glowing in the darkness, late 13th century atmosphere. Inside a 13th century European castle courtyard during a stormy night, painted artwork style medieval servants, knights, and craftsmen move between stone buildings carrying lanterns, horses standing near wooden stables, rain reflecting on the ground, tall castle towers in the background, authentic High Middle Ages European setting, detailed oil painting, a close-up historical painting of a medieval night guard in 1277 standing at a castle entrance during heavy rain. The knight wears chainmail armour, a padded gambeson, leather belt, and carries a shield and spear. Behind him is a massive stone gatehouse with burning torches, storm clouds covering the medieval sky, realistic 13th century European art style, a medieval royal castle wall in Europe around 1277 painted with rich oil brush strokes. Rain streams down ancient stone blocks while a traveller touches the cold castle wall, feeling the rough texture. Tower windows glow with candlelight. Thunderclouds surround the fortress. Peaceful but dramatic medieval bedtime story atmosphere. A detailed painting of daily life inside a European medieval castle in the late 13th century. Cooks prepare food near a large fireplace. Servants carry wooden buckets. Craftsmen repair tools. Knights discuss matters near stone columns. Warm torchlight contrasts with the storm outside. Historically accurate 1277 high medieval castle interior. A medieval European castle kitchen during a stormy night in 1277, painted as a historical oil painting. Cooks wearing medieval linen clothing prepare a warm meal beside a large fireplace. Wooden tables filled with bread and bowls. Servants working quietly. Rain visible through narrow stone windows. Authentic 13th century atmosphere. A cinematic medieval painting of a wooden cart abandoned beside a royal castle storage building during a heavy rainstorm in 1277. Wet wooden wheels, muddy ground, stone walls, medieval supplies, flickering lanterns, horses inside a stable nearby. Detailed European High Middle Ages painting style. A peaceful medieval bedtime story scene painted in classical artwork style, a traveller entering a European royal castle in 1277 while a storm rages outside. Large stone archway, glowing torches, guards welcoming visitors, wet cloak, medieval clothing. Warm interior light contrasting with dark, rainy night. detailed oil painting. A panoramic medieval European landscape painting from the year 1277 showing a royal castle surrounded by forests, hills, and farmland under a stormy sky. Villagers, horses, carts, and knights appear around the fortress. Thick stone walls and towers dominate the scene. Authentic late 13th century high medieval painting. A medieval castle gate during a thunderstorm, painted like an ancient European manuscript illustration. Two castle guards in 13th century armour watch travellers arriving. Wooden doors reinforced with iron. Rain pouring down. Torch flames flickering in the wind. Detailed medieval historical art style. A late 13th century European noble hall inside a royal castle during a rainy night. Painted with realistic oil painting techniques. Nobles wearing medieval clothing sit near a fireplace. Knights in armour stand nearby. Candles illuminate stone walls, wooden furniture, tapestries, and warm medieval atmosphere. A medieval stable inside a European royal castle in 1277 painted as a detailed historical scene. Horses react nervously to thunder. Stable workers wearing wool tunics calm the animals. Wooden beams, hay, lanterns, rain entering through open doors. Authentic High Middle Ages painting style. A dramatic painting of a 1277 European castle during a thunderstorm, showing tall stone towers, defensive walls, a gatehouse, and a traveller standing beneath the fortress. Lightning illuminates the sky. Rain falls over medieval fields. Torches shine through windows. Epic historical oil painting style. A medieval castle guard resting beneath a covered entrance during a stormy night in 1277 painted in a realistic European medieval art style. The guard wears chainmail and a cloak, holds a spear, talks quietly with another soldier. Wooden doors behind them. Rain and thunder outside. Peaceful historical atmosphere. A medieval European castle interior corridor in 1277 painted with detailed brushstrokes, stone walls, burning torches, narrow windows with rain outside. A traveller walking through the hallway wearing a wet cloak. Servants and knights passing by. Authentic late medieval architecture and atmosphere. A historical painting of a royal castle community in late 13th century Europe. Knights, merchants, servants, cooks, craftsmen, and animals living around a fortress during a stormy evening. Realistic medieval clothing, stone buildings, wooden carts, horses, torchlight. Detailed High Middle Ages artwork. A quiet medieval night scene in a European castle around the year 1277 painted in a soft oil painting style. A traveller stands beneath a stone archway listening to distant thunder. Warm candlelight from inside the castle. Rain falling outside, ancient walls holding centuries of history, relaxing medieval atmosphere. An immersive medieval European fantasy history painting of a royal castle during a storm in 1277. Massive stone fortress. Knights in chainmail. Villagers with cloaks. Horses. Wooden carts. Torchlit entrances. Rainy landscape. Dark clouds. Realistic late 13th century High Middle Ages architecture. Detailed oil painting style. Calm bedtime story mood. A late 13th century European royal castle entrance hall in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A medieval traveller stands beneath a massive wooden gate passage after entering the fortress, wearing a wet wool cloak and leather boots. Castle guards in chainmail armour stand nearby. torch flames illuminate ancient stone walls. Rain and thunder visible outside. Authentic High Middle Ages European atmosphere, realistic medieval painting style. A medieval European castle interior corridor during a stormy night in 1277 painted with classical oil painting techniques. Thick stone walls, flickering torches, narrow windows with rain outside. A traveller walking through the passage while servants and guards move quietly around him. Wooden beams and medieval architecture. Historically accurate late 13th century atmosphere. A detailed historical painting of a 1277 medieval castle hallway filled with evening activity. Servants carrying baskets, guards changing positions, workers walking across stone floors, horses being led towards stables, warm torchlight contrasting with the dark storm outside. Authentic European High Middle Ages clothing and architecture. Realistic oil painting style. Inside a grand European medieval castle hall in the year 1277 illustrated as an ancient historical painting. Large wooden tables. Benches along stone walls. A huge fireplace glowing warmly. Servants preparing the evening. No nobles passing through the hall. Rain sounds outside the windows. Detailed 13th century castle interior. Oil painting texture. A medieval traveller touching the rough stone wall of a royal castle in 1277 painted in a realistic historical artwork style. His hand rests on ancient fortress stones covered with centuries of history. Torchlight creates moving shadows. A guard and servant walk behind him. Thick defensive walls and medieval architecture. Late 13th century European atmosphere. A cinematic oil painting of a European medieval castle corridor during a rainy night around 1277. The scene shows everyday castle life messengers carrying documents, servants transporting food, children exploring the halls, tired guards returning from watch duty, all wearing authentic 13th century medieval clothing, warm torchlight, detailed historical painting style. A large medieval great hall in a European royal castle during the late 13th century, painted as a detailed oil painting. A massive stone fireplace provides warmth. Wooden tables are being cleared after dinner. Benches line the walls. Candles and torches illuminate the room. Servants work quietly while a storm rages outside. Authentic. Year 1277 setting. A historical painting of medieval furniture inside a royal castle in 1277 Europe. Heavy wooden tables, carved benches, storage chests, thick woven fabrics, candles, and stone walls create a realistic High Middle Ages interior. Servants organize belongings while nobles walk through the hall. Detailed medieval oil painting style. A medieval servant spreading fresh rushes across the castle floor in a European fortress around the year 1277 painted in a realistic historical style. The servant wears a simple linen tunic and wool clothing. Wooden floors, stone walls, fireplace glow, baskets of herbs nearby, showing everyday medieval household life. Detailed oil painting. A cozy medieval castle interior scene from 1277 Europe, painted as a historical oil artwork. Servants place herbs such as lavender and mint around living spaces to create pleasant smells. Wooden furniture, burning fireplace, candlelight, stone walls, medieval household atmosphere during a stormy evening. A realistic medieval European painting showing workers and servants inside a royal castle during the late 13th century. Bakers, cleaners, firekeepers, craftsmen, and guards work together in harmony, showing the importance of everyday castle life. Torchlit stone hallways, authentic 1277 clothing and architecture. A medieval castle evening meal preparation scene in Europe around 1277, painted with detailed brushstrokes. Servants prepare roasted food, fresh bread, and simmering dishes near a large fireplace. Wooden tables filled with medieval cooking tools. Warm light fills the room while rain falls outside. Historically accurate High Middle Ages artwork. A stormy night inside a 13th century European royal castle, painted as a peaceful historical oil painting. A traveller walks through a warm hallway while thunder echoes outside. Castle residents finish their daily tasks. Guards patrol, servants carry supplies, stone walls absorb the sound of rain. Relaxing medieval bedtime atmosphere. A detailed painting of a medieval castle guard watching the rain from a stone tower window in 1277 Europe. The guard wears chainmail armour, a cloak, and a helmet, holding a spear while looking over the Dark Kingdom landscape. Lightning in the distance. Authentic late 13th century military setting. A medieval European castle transformed by a stormy night. Painted in a soft historical oil painting style, the thunder outside becomes a gentle vibration inside the fortress. People gather near fireplaces, candles flicker, stone walls and wooden beams create a warm atmosphere. Realistic High Middle Ages environment from the year 1277. A grand medieval castle passageway in late 13th century Europe. Painted like a detailed illuminated manuscript combined with oil painting. Stone arches, wooden ceiling beams, torch holders, servants speaking quietly near doorways, knights walking through the halls, authentic 1277 royal fortress atmosphere. A historical oil painting showing the social hierarchy of a European medieval castle in 1277. Nobles wearing elegant medieval clothing stand in the hall while servants, cooks, craftsmen, and guards perform their duties around them, showing the daily life of a High Middle Ages royal household. A peaceful medieval castle night scene in Europe around 1277 painted with realistic oil brush strokes. A traveller stands beneath a wooden ceiling beam listening to distant thunder. Warm fireplace light surrounds him. Servants finish their work. Guards watch the gates. Ancient stone walls create a comforting atmosphere. An immersive historical painting of a living medieval European fortress in the year 1277. The castle is shown not as a ruin but as a functioning home with people walking, talking, working and resting. Stone halls, wooden structures, fireplaces, torches, knights, servants, and stormy weather create an authentic late 13th century scene. A cinematic medieval bedtime history painting of a royal castle interior during a storm in 1277 Europe. A traveller moves deeper into the fortress toward private chambers, surrounded by torchlit halls, stone walls, wooden doors, guards, servants, and peaceful nighttime activity. Realistic High Middle Ages architecture. Detailed oil painting style. Calm, relaxing atmosphere. A royal chamber inside a European medieval castle in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller enters a guarded corridor leading to the royal rooms. Candle flames flicker along cold stone walls. Richer fabrics hang beside carved wooden doors. Medieval guards stand nearby. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. Realistic painting style. A quiet medieval castle corridor leading to royal chambers during a stormy night in 1277 Europe. Painted with classical oil painting techniques, narrow stone passageways, iron candle holders, soft candlelight, wooden doors with carved details. A traveller walking silently while thunder echoes outside, historically accurate medieval architecture. The royal chambers of a European castle around the year 1277 painted as a realistic medieval historical artwork. A king and queen's private room with wooden furniture, decorated fabrics, carved doors, candlelight, stone walls, a warm fireplace. Elegant but practical medieval living space. Authentic High Middle Ages style. A detailed oil painting of a 13th century European royal bedchamber. A large wooden medieval bed with carved posts, heavy curtains, layered wool fabrics, embroidered textiles, candles, and a stone fireplace. The room belongs to a royal household in 1277, showing wealth, comfort, and medieval craftsmanship. A medieval European royal bedroom during a rainy night in 1277, painted in a historical oil painting style. The king and queen's sleeping area is surrounded by rich fabrics and wooden furniture. Rain falls against wooden shutters. Candlelight creates a peaceful atmosphere. Authentic late medieval castle interior. A close-up historical painting of a valuable medieval royal chest inside a 1277 European castle chamber. The wooden chest contains jewellery, letters, religious objects, and personal belongings, placed beside candles and decorated fabrics, showing the private human side of medieval rulers. Realistic oil painting style. A stormy night scene inside a royal castle chamber in late 13th century Europe. Painted with detailed brushstrokes. Heavy rain hits wooden shutters. Candles flicker. A noble family listens to the storm near a fireplace. Stone walls surround the room, showing that even medieval rulers lived with the power of nature. A medieval royal administrator's writing table in a European castle around 1277, depicted as a historical oil painting. A quill pen, ink pot, parchment documents, sealed letters, and wooden furniture sit under candlelight, showing the importance of medieval record-keeping and royal management. A 13th century European castle scholar, writing with a quill beside parchment during a stormy evening. Painted in a realistic medieval artwork style, the figure wears medieval robes. Candles illuminate the wooden desk. Stone walls and royal chamber details surround him. Authentic High Middle Ages atmosphere. A royal castle office in medieval Europe during the year 1277, painted as a detailed historical scene. Officials organize parchment records, financial documents, and royal agreements while candlelight shines across wooden tables, showing the administrative world behind medieval kingship. A medieval royal chamber with household herbs and personal care materials in 1277 Europe. Painted in classical oil painting style. Small wooden containers hold herbs, plants, and traditional medieval remedies near a fireplace. Servants prepare household items. Realistic, late 13th century interior. A peaceful medieval royal room during a stormy night, painted as a warm historical oil painting. A noble sits near a fireplace while advisors quietly discuss politics. Family members share conversations. Candles glow. Heavy curtains surround the chamber, showing the personal side of medieval rulers in 1277. A realistic medieval painting of a king and queen's private chamber in a European castle around 1277. The room shows both power and humanity royal clothing. decorated furniture, personal objects, books, parchment, fireplace warmth, and a storm outside the stone walls, authentic High Middle Ages atmosphere. A medieval servant entering a royal chamber at night to adjust candles and maintain the fireplace, painted as a detailed historical oil artwork. The servant wears simple 13th century clothing, carefully tending the room while royal furniture, curtains, and stone walls surround the scene. A cinematic medieval castle interior painting from the year 1277. A traveller rests near a fireplace inside the royal chamber, listening to thunder outside, surrounded by candles, wooden furniture, rich textiles, and ancient stone architecture, creating a relaxing bedtime history atmosphere. A European medieval royal chamber showing the contrast between luxury and practical life in the late 13th century. Painted with realistic oil brush strokes, fine fabrics and carved wood decorations appear alongside simple tools, storage boxes, and household items. Authentic 1277 castle environment. A historical painting of medieval royal life behind closed doors in a European castle. Nobles discuss future plans. Servants maintain the room. Candles illuminate parchment and furniture. Storm clouds outside the windows, showing the hidden daily routines of a royal household in 1277. A medieval castle private corridor after leaving the royal chamber. Painted in detailed oil painting style. A traveller walks beneath stone arches carrying the memory of the warm royal room. Candlelight reflects on walls. Guards stand quietly. Thunder echoes through the fortress. Authentic late 13th century Europe. An immersive historical painting of a living royal castle in Europe around 1277. The scene combines royal authority and ordinary human moments, warm fireplaces, quiet conversations, servants working, medieval furniture, stone walls, candles, and a stormy night outside. Realistic High Middle Ages artwork. A cinematic medieval bedtime story illustration of a royal castle chamber during a storm in 1277 Europe. A traveller leaves the peaceful royal room and continues deeper into the fortress, passing candlelit corridors, carved wooden doors, guards, servants, and ancient stone walls. Detailed oil painting style, calm historical atmosphere. A grand medieval European Great Hall inside a royal castle in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. The room is filled with warm fireplace light, long wooden tables covered with cloth, candles glowing, servants preparing an evening feast, nobles gathering, musicians arranging instruments. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A stormy night feast inside a European royal castle around 1277, painted in a realistic medieval historical artwork style. The Great Hall is alive with activity, guests seated at wooden tables, servants carrying food trays, candles flickering, rain visible through narrow windows. Thunder outside, detailed oil painting texture. A medieval royal great hall during evening preparations in 13th century Europe, painted with classical oil painting techniques. Servants arrange dishes. Musicians prepare medieval instruments. Nobles speak quietly. Large fireplace burns brightly. Stone walls decorated with tapestries. Authentic year 1277 castle interior. A detailed historical painting of a medieval feast in a European castle around 1277. The royal family sits at the highest table. Nobles and officials sit below. Servants move through the hall, showing the social hierarchy of the late 13th century. Warm candlelight, realistic High Middle Ages oil painting style, a cinematic medieval painting of a royal banquet hall in Europe during a thunderstorm in 1277. Long wooden tables filled with medieval dishes, roasted meat, fresh bread, herbs, cups, candles, and guests wearing authentic 13th century clothing, storm clouds outside the castle windows, detailed historical artwork, a medieval European castle kitchen preparing a royal feast in the year 1277 painted as a realistic historical oil painting. Cooks and assistants work around large fireplaces, preparing roasted meat, bread, herbs, and food supplies. Wooden tables, cooking tools, smoke, heat, and busy medieval atmosphere. A detailed oil painting of medieval cooks working behind the scenes of a royal castle feast in late 13th century Europe. Servants prepare food in a smoky kitchen, carrying trays toward the great hall, storing supplies in wooden containers, authentic 12th-century medieval household environment. A historical painting of medieval food preparation and storage in a European castle around 1277. Wooden barrels, sacks of grain, smoked meats, dried foods, and servants organizing supplies inside a stone storage room, showing how a large medieval household managed resources. A medieval musician performing inside a royal castle great hall during a stormy evening in 1277 painted with realistic oil brush strokes. A musician plays a medieval string instrument near the fireplace. Guests listen quietly. Candles glow on wooden tables. Rain and thunder create a peaceful atmosphere. A European medieval feast scene from the year 1277 showing musicians, nobles, servants, and guests gathered together, painted as a detailed historical artwork. The great hall is decorated with candles, wooden beams, stone walls, tapestries, and a warm fireplace, authentic High Middle Ages style. A close-up historical painting of medieval dining customs in a royal castle around 1277. Guests eat using knives, wooden spoons, and their hands while sitting at a long decorated table. Servants serve food and drinks. Candles illuminate the scene. Realistic late 13th century European atmosphere. A medieval nobleman and royal advisor having a quiet conversation during a castle feast in 1277 Europe. Painted as a detailed oil painting, they sit near a fireplace surrounded by candles, wooden tables, servants carrying cups, musicians playing softly, storm sounds outside. A medieval royal banquet showing the connection between power and celebration in late 13th century Europe. Painted in classical historical style. The king and important guests sit proudly at the highest table. Decorated dishes and expensive fabrics display wealth. Servants and nobles fill the hall. A peaceful medieval great hall after the excitement of a feast begins to fade, painted as a warm historical oil painting. The fire burns lower. Musicians play softly. Guests talk quietly. Candles flicker. Rain falls outside the castle windows. Relaxing bedtime history atmosphere from 1277. A medieval European castle dining hall during a thunderstorm, painted with realistic historical details. Thick stone walls protect the room. Guests enjoy food and conversation while nature rages outside, showing how people in 1277 lived alongside storms, seasons, and changing weather. A detailed painting of medieval spices and trade goods inside a royal castle around the year 1277. Servants carry small containers of rare spices, herbs, and imported ingredients through the Great Hall, showing connections between European castles and distant trade networks. A medieval European royal feast showing everyday human moments in a 1277 castle. Nobles laugh, servants deliver drinks, musicians perform, families share stories near the fire, creating a realistic scene of friendship, community, and medieval social life. Detailed oil painting style. An immersive historical painting of a living medieval castle during an evening gathering in 1277 Europe. The Great Hall connects to a larger world through travellers, goods, stories, and ideas. Knights, merchants, servants, and nobles interact under candlelight. Authentic High Middle Ages atmosphere. A cinematic medieval bedtime story painting of a royal castle great hall during a rainy night in 1277. Warm fireplace glow, wooden tables, candles, medieval food, quiet conversations, soft music, and storm sounds create a peaceful atmosphere. Realistic European historical oil painting style. A final view of a medieval European great hall after a royal feast in the year 1277, painted as a detailed historical oil artwork. Servants begin clearing tables. Candles remain glowing. The storm continues outside. Empty benches and warm fire create a calm, late-night castle atmosphere. Authentic 13th century painting style. A medieval European castle kitchen during a stormy night in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. Cooks and servants work beside large fireplaces, preparing bread, roasted food, and simmering pots. Warm firelight contrasts with cold rain outside, stone walls, wooden tables, authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A realistic medieval painting of workers inside a royal castle service area around 1277 Europe. Servants carry wooden containers, organize supplies, sweep stone floors, and prepare for the next morning, showing the hidden daily machinery behind a noble household. Detailed historical oil painting style. A 13th century European castle kitchen filled with activity, painted as a classical medieval oil artwork. Cooks check large iron pots over open fires. Workers carry baskets of ingredients. Smoke rises from ovens. Bread rests near the fireplace. Authentic year 1277 medieval household environment. A detailed historical painting of medieval servants working in a royal castle kitchen during a rainy night in 1277. Workers wearing linen shirts, wool tunics, and aprons perform different duties. Candles and fire illuminate stone walls, showing everyday High Middle Ages life. A medieval European kitchen interior during a thunderstorm in the late 13th century, painted with realistic brush strokes. A cook stirs a large pot above a fireplace, while another servant prepares supplies. Rain hits small windows. Warm firelight creates a peaceful atmosphere. Authentic 1277 castle scene. A historical oil painting showing the organization of a medieval royal household in Europe, around 1277. Different servants perform specialized tasks. Cooks preparing meals. Workers caring for supplies, cleaners maintaining rooms, and assistants helping nobles inside a large stone castle. Detailed high medieval artwork. A medieval servant carrying fresh water through a European castle passage in 1277 painted as a realistic historical scene. The worker carefully balances wooden buckets across uneven stone floors. Torchlight reflects on ancient walls, narrow corridors, authentic late 13th century castle life, a cinematic medieval painting of a castle worker walking through dark stone corridors during a stormy night in 1277 Europe. The servant carries water and passes wooden doors. Candles flicker along the walls. Thunder echoes outside, showing the quiet routines of medieval labour. A detailed oil painting of medieval castle service passages in the year 1277. Servants move through narrow stone hallways carrying firewood, food supplies, cloth and tools, understanding every corner of the fortress. Torchlight and rain creating a realistic high Middle Ages atmosphere. A medieval European kitchen worker beside a fireplace during a stormy night. Painted in historical oil painting style. The servant performs familiar daily rituals, touches a small protective charm, and listens to the rain while finishing tasks, showing medieval beliefs and traditions, authentic 13th century setting. A historical painting of medieval storage rooms inside a royal castle around 1277. Large wooden barrels, sacks of grain, food containers, and supplies fill the stone chamber. Servants organize resources under candlelight, showing how castles prepared for difficult seasons. A medieval castle storage area during the late 13th century in Europe. Painted as a detailed oil artwork, workers inspect barrels, sacks, dried foods, and household materials while preparing for storms and shortages. Realistic high Middle Ages architecture and atmosphere. A peaceful medieval kitchen scene in a European castle during a storm, painted with warm oil brush strokes. Servants laugh quietly while preparing bread and meals. Workers share stories beside the fire, showing the human side of medieval life beyond hardship. A young medieval worker carrying folded cloth through a royal castle corridor in 1277 Europe, depicted as a realistic historical painting. Stone walls, wooden beams, candlelight, and other servants walking through familiar passages show generations of everyday castle labour. A medieval European castle courtyard during a heavy rainstorm in the year 1277, painted as a detailed historical oil painting. Torches reflect on wet stone paths. Servants move between buildings. Horses receive care. Fires burn inside structures, showing that castle life continues despite bad weather. A realistic painting of medieval servants working during a stormy night in a royal fortress. Some workers maintain fires, others care for animals, organize supplies, and prepare rooms, showing the many roles needed to keep a 13th century European castle functioning. A historical oil painting showing the contrast between royal comfort and servant labour in a medieval castle around 1277. Warm royal chambers above, busy kitchens and service areas below, workers preparing food and supplies, detailed European High Middle Ages environment. A cinematic medieval bedtime history illustration of a castle kitchen slowly preparing for night. The great hall is quiet. Servants finish their duties. Fires burn lower. Dishes are cleaned, and rain falls outside the stone fortress. Authentic late 13th century European painting style. A medieval European castle stairway leading from warm kitchens toward cold battlements in 1277, painted as a detailed historical oil artwork. A worker walks upward carrying supplies. Torchlight fades behind him. Thunder and rain approach from above. Realistic high Middle Ages atmosphere. A dramatic historical painting of a 1277 European royal castle at night, showing hidden workers and approaching watchmen. Kitchens glow warmly below, while guards prepare on the battlements above. Stone towers surrounded by storm clouds. servants, knights, and medieval architecture. Detailed oil painting style. A medieval European royal castle battlements during a stormy night in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller climbs narrow stone steps toward the fortress walls, rain falling around him, torchlight glowing in the dark corridors, thunder echoing through ancient stone, authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A dramatic historical painting of a 1277 European castle watchtower during a violent storm. Medieval guards stand on the battlements wearing chainmail armour, cloaks and helmets, holding torches against strong wind and rain. Dark landscape below covered in mist. Realistic oil painting style. A medieval castle guard walking along wet stone battlements in Europe around the year 1277 painted as a detailed oil artwork. The guard carefully watches the dark landscape, holding a spear and torch, storm clouds above, rain on stone walls, authentic High Middle Ages military atmosphere. A cinematic medieval painting of a watchman protecting a royal fortress during a stormy night in late 13th century Europe. Guards stand beneath sheltered sections of the wall. Torch flames struggle against the wind. Chainmail armour shines with rain. Massive stone towers disappear into mist. Historical oil painting style. A realistic historical painting of a traveller standing beside medieval castle parapets in 1277 Europe. He wears a heavy cloak and boots, looking across a dark kingdom landscape with villages, roads, and fields hidden beneath storm clouds. Guards patrol nearby, detailed High Middle Ages artwork. A medieval European battlement scene during heavy rain in the year 1277 painted with classical oil painting techniques. Uneven stone walls, defensive openings, wooden structures, watchmen carrying lanterns and weapons, lightning illuminating the fortress, authentic late 13th century castle architecture. A close-up historical painting of a medieval castle guard holding a torch during a stormy night. The guard wears chainmail, a padded gambeson, a cloak, and a helmet. His face illuminated by golden firelight while rain and wind surround the stone fortress. Realistic 13th century European art style. A peaceful medieval night watch scene in a European castle around 1277 painted as a detailed oil painting. Two guards stand silently on the battlement sharing the experience of the storm, one holding a torch, another watching the horizon. Rain falling softly. Calm historical atmosphere. A medieval warrior on castle duty during a storm, depicted in a realistic historical painting style. A guard touches a small protective charm attached to his clothing, standing beside a stone wall with a torch, showing medieval beliefs and personal traditions in the year 1277. A detailed medieval oil painting showing the quiet reality of castle guard duty in late 13th century Europe. A tired watchman stands alone on wet battlements, waiting through the night, surrounded by rain, cold stone, darkness, and distant thunder. Authentic High Middle Ages atmosphere. A historical painting of medieval castle defences in 1277 Europe. Watchmen patrol stone walls with defensive openings. Towers rise behind them. Torches illuminate the fortress. Guards observe roads and villages below, showing how castles balance protection and visibility. A panoramic medieval European landscape painting from the top of a royal castle battlement in the year 1277. Storm clouds cover the kingdom. Villages and roads disappear into mist. A group of guards watches from the stone walls. Realistic oil painting style. A dramatic oil painting of a medieval fortress connected to the surrounding kingdom in late 13th century Europe. From the battlements, guards overlook villages, farms, roads, and forests, showing that the castle protects a living community rather than standing alone. A medieval castle courtyard viewed from the battlements during a rainy night in 1277, painted as a detailed historical artwork. Small figures of servants move between buildings. Fires glow inside windows. Guards watch above. Ancient stone walls surround the fortress. Authentic high Middle Ages setting. A cinematic historical painting of thunder rolling over a European medieval castle in the year 1277. Guards stand calmly on the battlements as lightning flashes across dark hills. Rain falls on stone towers. Torches glow through the storm. Realistic oil painting style. A medieval European watchtower interior during a stormy night. Painted with detailed oil brush strokes. Guards rest briefly beside a small fireplace while waiting for their next patrol. Weapons and helmets nearby. Narrow stone windows showing rain and darkness outside. Authentic 13th century castle life. A realistic historical painting showing the patience and boredom of medieval guard duty. A lone watchman stands on a castle wall during a long rainy night in 1277, listening to thunder and wind, holding a spear, surrounded by ancient stone defences. Peaceful medieval atmosphere, a medieval castle battlement scene showing the relationship between humans and nature in 1277 Europe. Guards observe the stormy landscape. Rain and wind shape their daily lives. Stone walls protect the community below. Detailed historical oil painting style. An immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a royal castle under a stormy sky in 1277. Watchmen stand on towering stone walls with torches. The sleeping kingdom stretches below. Thunder becomes a gentle rhythm. Calm and atmospheric late 13th century European artwork. A final cinematic view of medieval European castle guards standing beneath a storm at night in the year 1277. Ancient stone battlements, dark clouds, rain, glowing torches, chainmail armour, and a silent kingdom below create a realistic high Middle Ages historical oil painting, peaceful bedtime story mood. A medieval European castle chapel during a stormy night in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller enters a small stone chapel inside a royal fortress. Candles flicker beside religious images. Wooden benches line the walls. Rain falls outside narrow windows. Authentic late 13th century high Middle Ages atmosphere. A peaceful medieval castle interior corridor leading from the battlements to a chapel in 1277 Europe. Painted with classical oil painting techniques. A traveller walks through candlelit stone passages. Rain echoes through wooden shutters. Ancient walls surround the quiet path. Realistic historical medieval artwork style. A detailed historical painting of a small royal chapel inside a European castle around the year 1277. Stone floors, wooden benches, candles, religious decorations, carved wooden details, and a peaceful atmosphere create an authentic late medieval sacred space. Realistic oil painting style. A medieval European chapel during a thunderstorm at night, painted as a realistic historical oil artwork. A few candles create warm golden light against cold stone walls. A traveller sits quietly in reflection. Rain and thunder outside. showing the peaceful spiritual side of a 13th century castle. A 1277 medieval castle priest or chaplain inside a small European chapel, depicted in detailed oil painting style. The priest wears traditional medieval religious clothing, stands beside candles and religious objects. Stone walls and wooden furniture surround him. Authentic High Middle Ages atmosphere. A cinematic medieval painting of a noble castle chapel in late 13th century Europe. A knight kneels in prayer before a journey. Candlelight reflects on stone walls. A priest offers guidance nearby. Wooden benches and religious symbols create a calm historical atmosphere. A medieval European castle chapel showing daily religious life in the year 1277 painted as a detailed historical artwork. Noble families, servants, knights, and children gather quietly for prayer. Candles illuminate the room. Storm clouds visible through small windows. Authentic High Middle Ages style. A peaceful oil painting of a medieval traveller sitting inside a castle chapel during a rainy night in 1277 Europe. The traveller listens to the sound of rain on the roof. Candles flicker softly. Shadows move across ancient stone walls, creating a relaxing bedtime history atmosphere. A historical painting showing medieval people interpreting a storm through religious beliefs in 13th century Europe. Farmers, knights, and castle residents pray inside a small chapel while thunder rolls outside. Candles glow, showing this connection between nature, faith, and daily life in 1277. A medieval European chapel scene inspired by historical manuscript art from the year 1277. Wooden benches, wax candles, religious objects, stone arches, priests, nobles, and servants create an authentic late 13th century castle worship environment. Detailed painting style. A close-up historical oil painting of medieval religious objects inside a castle chapel. A small wooden container holding sacred items rests near candles. Carved wooden decorations surround it. Stone walls create a mysterious atmosphere. Authentic 13th century European craftsmanship. A medieval castle chapel during a stormy night, painted with realistic oil brush strokes. Outside the small window, rain falls over the kingdom while inside. Candles illuminate peaceful figures praying and reflecting, showing that kings and common people share the same storm. A detailed medieval painting of a noble family ceremony inside a European castle chapel around 1277. A priest performs a religious ritual while knights, servants, and nobles watch quietly. Candles and wooden decorations create a solemn atmosphere. Authentic High Middle Ages setting. A historical oil painting of a medieval knight preparing for a journey inside a castle chapel in 1277 Europe. The knight kneels before candles and religious symbols. Armour rests nearby. A priest offers blessings. Stone walls and candlelight create a peaceful scene. A medieval child watching candle flames inside a royal castle chapel during a stormy night, painted as a detailed historical artwork. The child sits on a wooden bench, fascinated by the light and shadows, while adults pray nearby. Authentic late 13th century European atmosphere. A cinematic medieval castle chapel interior showing the connection between religion and everyday life in 1277 Europe. Servants, knights, nobles, and priests share the same sacred space. Candles glow, rain falls outside. Stone architecture and medieval clothing are historically accurate. A quiet medieval chapel corridor after a prayer ceremony in a European castle around the year 1277, painted in realistic oil painting style. A traveller leaves the chapel carrying a feeling of peace. Candlelight fades behind him. Ancient stone passages continue into darkness. An immersive historical painting of a medieval royal castle during a stormy night in 1277. A small chapel glows warmly inside the fortress, while rain and thunder surround the walls, showing the contrast between the powerful storm outside and peaceful reflection within. A relaxing medieval bedtime story painting of a European castle chapel at night. Candlelight. Old wooden benches, stone walls, religious decorations, gentle rain sounds, and a traveller sitting quietly create a calm atmosphere from the late 13th century High Middle Ages. A final cinematic view of a medieval European castle chapel in the year 1277. The traveller steps back into the candlelit corridor after reflection. Thunder echoes softly through the fortress. Rain continues outside. Ancient stones hold centuries of memories. Detailed historical oil painting style. A forgotten corridor inside a European medieval royal castle in the year 1277, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller walks through narrow stone passages with weak candlelight. Old wooden doors, worn cloth hanging near storage areas, forgotten objects along the walls, authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A mysterious medieval castle storage room during a stormy night in 1277 Europe, painted with realistic historical oil techniques. Wooden shelves, barrels, storage boxes, dried herbs hanging from beams, old tools, and household supplies fill the stone chamber, showing the practical side of medieval life. A detailed historical painting of a medieval castle storeroom in late 13th century Europe. Servants organize grain sacks, wooden barrels, salted food, wine containers, and household supplies under candlelight, showing the careful resource management of a royal fortress in the year 1277. A medieval European estate manager recording supplies inside a castle around 1277, painted as a realistic oil artwork. The official writes on parchment with a quill, surrounded by barrels, ledgers, wooden boxes, and storage goods, showing the organized administrative side of medieval castles. A close-up historical oil painting of ordinary medieval objects inside a European castle. A wooden spoon, dried herbs hanging from a wooden beam, simple tools, and household containers rest on shelves, revealing the everyday details of life in the year 1277. A medieval storage chamber in a royal castle during a rainy night, painted in classical historical style. Candlelight illuminates wooden shelves filled with supplies, stone walls covered with age marks, barrels and baskets carefully arranged, authentic High Middle Ages European atmosphere. A detailed painting of medieval herbs hanging near a castle doorway in 1277 Europe. Bundles of lavender, mint, and other plants hang from wooden beams. Servants pass through the corridor. Candles glow against stone walls, showing practical and symbolic medieval traditions. A medieval European castle clothing storage room around the year 1277, depicted as a realistic historical oil painting. Folded wool garments, linen fabrics, wooden chests, sewing tools, and repaired clothing fill the room, showing how medieval people maintained valuable textiles. A close-up medieval painting of a worker examining old fabric inside a castle in 1277. The person gently touches wool cloth while imagining the labour behind its creation, with spinning tools, wooden shelves, and candlelight surrounding the scene. Authentic late 13th century atmosphere. A historical oil painting showing the journey of medieval clothing production in Europe. Farmers, textile workers, spinners, weavers, and tailors create fabric that eventually becomes garments inside a royal castle, representing the interconnected labour of the year 1277. A forgotten repair room inside a medieval European castle around 1277, painted as a detailed historical artwork. Old tools, broken furniture, wooden handles, repair materials, and workbenches fill a small stone chamber, showing the hidden labour that kept the fortress functioning. A medieval craftsman repairing equipment inside a quiet castle workshop during a stormy night in 1277 Europe. Depicted in realistic oil painting style, the worker sits beside a candle, fixing tools and furniture while rain falls outside, showing ordinary medieval life. A peaceful medieval castle worker alone in a small repair room, painted as a historical oil artwork. The worker repairs a wooden object by candlelight, surrounded by old tools and stone walls, creating a quiet human moment inside a 13th century fortress. A realistic medieval painting of practical spaces inside a European royal castle, unlike grand halls. This scene shows simple corridors, storage rooms, workshops, and servant areas filled with everyday objects, revealing the hidden life of a fortress in 1277. A mysterious medieval wooden carving on a castle doorway in late 13th century Europe, painted with detailed historical brushstrokes. A small handmade symbol left by an unknown person appears on ancient stone, with candlelight and worn wood creating a sense of forgotten stories. A medieval child or worker leaving a small carving mark on a stone wall inside a European castle around 1277, depicted as a realistic historical oil painting. The quiet moment shows ordinary people leaving traces of their lives behind centuries ago. An immersive historical painting of hidden castle corners in medieval Europe during a stormy night. Storage rooms, forgotten tools, old clothing, wooden boxes, and narrow corridors reveal the everyday routines of people living inside a royal fortress in the year 1277. A cinematic medieval bedtime history painting of a European castle after midnight in 1277. A traveller explores quiet, forgotten passages while rain falls outside. Candles flicker. Storage rooms reveal old objects, and ancient stone walls hold centuries of memories. A wide interior painting of a living medieval castle in late 13th century Europe. The scene connects royal chambers, great halls, kitchens, storage areas, and servant corridors into one functioning world filled with people, objects, routines, and hidden stories. Realistic oil painting style. A final atmospheric medieval painting of a European castle during a softening storm in the year 1277. A traveller stands at the end of a narrow corridor looking back at forgotten rooms. Candles glow. Rain whispers on the roof. Ancient stone walls reveal the quiet human stories of the fortress. Detailed historical oil painting style. A medieval European royal castle overlooking a stormy countryside in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller stands near a narrow stone window looking over dark fields, villages, farms, and distant hills beneath heavy rain clouds. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A panoramic medieval landscape painting of a European castle during a stormy night around 1277. The fortress rises above fields, forests, roads, and small villages glowing with faint lights through the rain. Showing the connection between the castle and the surrounding kingdom, realistic historical oil painting style, a medieval castle lookout passage in late 13th century Europe, painted as a realistic historical artwork. A traveller wearing a cloak looks through narrow stone openings at the storm-covered countryside. Dark clouds, wet fields, distant villages, and ancient fortress walls create an authentic 1277 atmosphere. A detailed oil painting of a medieval village during a storm near a royal castle in the year 1277. Wooden houses glow with firelight. Villagers gather indoors. Farmers protect supplies. Children watch the thunder. Rain falls over fields, showing everyday rural life in High Middle Ages Europe. A historical painting of medieval farmers in 13th century Europe preparing for a stormy night. Villagers protect crops, store tools, care for animals, and gather near small fires. While a distant stone castle overlooks the countryside, authentic late medieval rural atmosphere, a cinematic medieval European landscape scene from 1277, showing the relationship between castle and village. A large stone fortress stands above farmland. Roads connect villages and gates. Farmers transport supplies. Travellers move through the rain. Detailed historical oil painting style. A medieval traveller watching rain fall over fields from a castle window in the year 1277, depicted as a peaceful historical oil painting. The traveller wears a heavy cloak. Distant villages glow softly. Storm clouds cover the hills. Ancient stone walls frame the scene. A realistic medieval painting of rural life connected to a royal castle in late 13th century Europe. Farmers working fields, merchants travelling roads, villagers living in wooden houses, and a fortress standing above the land show the network of people supporting medieval society. A medieval European village during a thunderstorm at night, painted with detailed oil brushstrokes. Families gather around small fireplaces inside wooden homes. Someone repairs a tool. Children listen to thunder. Rain falls outside. Authentic 1277 countryside atmosphere. A historical oil painting showing medieval weather traditions in Europe around the year 1277. Villagers observe clouds, wind direction, and animal behavior to predict weather. Standing near farms and wooden homes under a dramatic stormy sky. Realistic High Middle Ages style. A medieval farmer looking at storm clouds above the countryside in 13th century Europe. Painted as a detailed historical artwork. The farmer studies the sky and predicts tomorrow's weather, surrounded by fields, animals, wooden tools, and a distant castle. A medieval European landscape showing roads connecting a royal castle, villages, and farms during a stormy night in 1277. Merchants with carts, messengers on horseback, farmers carrying supplies, and travellers seeking shelter move through the wet countryside. Realistic oil painting style. A detailed painting of medieval trade and communication in late 13th century Europe. Merchants travel along muddy roads, messengers carry letters between castles, farmers deliver goods, and pilgrims walk toward distant religious sites, with a stormy castle landscape in the background. A dramatic medieval fortress landscape from the year 1277 painted as a historical oil artwork. A tall castle controls the surrounding region, overlooking villages, roads, farms, and forests, showing the fortress as both a defensive structure and a symbol of authority. A medieval castle surrounded by storm clouds and countryside in Europe, around 1277, depicted in realistic oil painting style. The fortress walls stand above the land while farmers, villagers, and travellers continue their lives below, showing that nature affects everyone equally. A historical painting of medieval people performing protective farming customs during uncertain weather in 13th century Europe. Farmers gather near fields, using traditional symbols and rituals for good harvests, while storm clouds move above the village. Authentic high Middle Ages atmosphere. A peaceful medieval night scene showing a castle and countryside after a storm begins to weaken in 1277 Europe. Rain becomes gentle, fields shine with water, village lights glow softly, castle towers stand quietly beneath fading clouds, detailed historical oil painting style, an immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a European kingdom during a stormy night in 1277. A royal castle, nearby villages, farms, roads, travellers, and forests exist together under the same rain and thunder, showing a connected medieval world. Realistic oil painting. A cinematic medieval painting of a traveller returning from a castle lookout toward the interior corridors in 1277 Europe. Candlelight leads him away from the stormy landscape. Stone walls surround him. Distant villages disappear behind rain. Authentic late 13th century atmosphere. A final atmospheric historical oil painting of a medieval European castle at night in the year 1277. The fortress stands above a living kingdom of villages, farms, roads, and people while the storm slowly passes, showing the connection between nature, society, and medieval life. Detailed High Middle Ages artwork. A private royal council chamber inside a European medieval castle in the year 1277, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. Nobles and advisors sit quietly near a fireplace, discussing matters around a wooden table with maps, parchment letters, and sealed documents. Candlelight reflects on stone walls. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A medieval European castle chamber after midnight during a stormy night in 1277, painted in realistic historical oil painting style. A few nobles gather privately near a fireplace. Rain falls against wooden shutters. Candles burn low, creating a quiet atmosphere of secret conversations and medieval politics. A detailed historical painting of medieval advisors discussing strategy inside a royal castle around the year 1277. A large map spreads across a wooden table. Nobles point at marked locations. Parchment documents and wax seals sit nearby. Warm firelight contrasts with the dark storm outside. A medieval royal council meeting in late 13th century Europe, depicted as a realistic oil painting. Lords, advisors, and officials wearing authentic medieval clothing discuss trade routes, diplomacy, and regional concerns inside a candlelit stone chamber, showing the quieter side of medieval power. A close-up historical painting of medieval wax seals and parchment letters inside a European castle in 1277. A wooden table holds rolled documents, ink pots, quills, and sealed messages. Candlelight illuminates the symbols of authority and communication in the High Middle Ages. A medieval messenger's letter preparation scene in a European royal castle around 1277, painted as a detailed historical artwork. A scribe writes with a quill. Another person seals parchment with red wax. Maps and documents surround them, showing the slow and careful communication of medieval society. A realistic medieval oil painting of nobles having a quiet political discussion during a stormy night in a European castle. One advisor studies a map, another thinks beside the fireplace, others arrange parchment documents, showing the human side of medieval decision-making. A cinematic medieval castle interior scene from the year 1277. A private chamber glows with candlelight while nobles negotiate alliances, discuss family connections, and plan future actions. Stone walls and wooden furniture create an authentic late 13th century European atmosphere. A historical painting of medieval court life inside a royal castle in 1277 Europe. Nobles and advisors carefully choose their words during a private conversation, showing diplomacy, reputation, loyalty, and ambition. Detailed oil painting style with realistic medieval clothing. A medieval European ruler's advisory chamber during a rainy night, painted with classical oil painting techniques. Trusted officials discuss land management, finances, and diplomacy while sitting near a fireplace. Parchment records and maps reveal the organized administration behind medieval rule. A quiet medieval castle corridor after midnight in 1277 Europe, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. Low candles illuminate empty stone passages. Servants walk silently. Wooden doors remain closed, and distant thunder echoes through the sleeping fortress. A medieval noble rolling up a large parchment map after a late-night discussion inside a royal castle, painted as a realistic historical artwork. The fireplace glows softly, candles flicker, sealed letters rest on the table, and the storm outside begins to weaken. A close-up painting of a medieval advisor thinking beside a fireplace in a European castle around 1277. The figure studies parchment documents. Firelight reflects on thoughtful eyes. Wooden furniture and stone walls surround the quiet political chamber. Authentic High Middle Ages style. A medieval castle chamber showing the contrast between public ceremony and private power in late 13th century Europe. Unlike a grand hall, this room contains only a few nobles, maps, letters, candles, and quiet discussions. Realistic historical oil painting style. A dramatic historical painting of medieval diplomacy inside a European royal castle during a stormy night in 1277. Nobles exchange letters, discuss alliances, and negotiate decisions while rain hits the shutters. Candlelight creates a secretive atmosphere. An immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a royal castle after midnight in the year 1277. The feast is over. The halls are quiet. Advisors finish conversations by the fireplace. Guards remain awake outside, and the storm becomes a gentle background sound. A medieval European court scene showing ordinary human emotions behind political decisions, painted as a detailed oil artwork. Advisors worry, think carefully, and discuss uncertain futures while surrounded by maps, parchment, candles, and ancient stone walls. A peaceful medieval castle interior during the final hours of a storm in 1277 Europe. A private chamber door closes after a council meeting. Candles glow in the corridor. Rain becomes lighter outside, and the fortress slowly settles into sleep. A cinematic historical painting of a European royal castle at night in the late 13th century. Different parts of the fortress remain active. Guards patrol walls. Servants tend fires. Advisors discuss matters, and workers prepare for morning, showing a castle that never fully sleeps. A final atmospheric oil painting of a medieval European castle corridor leading towards sleeping chambers in the year 1277. A traveller follows candlelight through quiet stone passages while rain softly falls outside, preparing to discover medieval nighttime routines and rest, authentic High Middle Ages style. A medieval European royal castle at night in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. The fortress corridors are quiet after midnight. Candles burn low along stone walls, servants complete final tasks, rain softly falls outside, and the castle slowly settles into sleep. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A peaceful medieval castle corridor during a gentle stormy night in 1277 Europe, painted with realistic historical oil techniques. A servant walks through the passage carrying a bucket of water. Candlelight reflects on ancient stone walls. Wooden shutters block the wind. Calm, nighttime atmosphere. A detailed historical painting of medieval servants maintaining a royal castle after midnight. Workers check fireplaces, close wooden shutters, carry supplies, and prepare for the next day, showing the hidden routines that keep a 13th century European fortress alive. A medieval servant preparing firewood inside a castle service room around the year 1277, depicted as a realistic oil painting. The worker carefully arranges logs beside a fireplace. Candles illuminate stone walls. Wooden tools and supplies surround the room. Authentic High Middle Ages setting. A historical oil painting of a medieval castle interior without modern lighting. Servants gather near fireplaces after sunset. Candle flames provide the only illumination. Stone corridors remain dark and quiet, showing how nighttime changed daily life in 13th century Europe. A medieval European household scene showing life after dark in 1277, painted as a detailed historical artwork. Workers sit together quietly after a long day, discussing weather and tomorrow's duties near a small fire. Simple clothing, wooden furniture, warm candlelight atmosphere. A close-up historical painting of a medieval candle clock inside a European castle around 1277. A marked candle burns slowly beside parchment and a wooden table, showing how people measured time at night before modern clocks. Realistic oil painting style. A medieval guard changing shifts inside a royal castle during a stormy night in late 13th century Europe. Painted as a detailed historical oil artwork. Two guards exchange information in a candlelit corridor, wearing chainmail armor and cloaks, showing castle security routines. A realistic medieval painting of castle guards passing each other during night watch in 1277 Europe. One guard finishes his duty while another takes responsibility. Stone corridors, torches, wooden doors, and rain sounds create an authentic High Middle Ages atmosphere. A cinematic medieval castle interior scene from the year 1277, showing the importance of routine and preparation. Servants maintain fires, protect supplies, care for animals, and complete nighttime duties inside a large stone fortress. Detailed historical oil painting style. A medieval European castle window overlooking a dark, stormy landscape in 1277, painted as a peaceful historical oil artwork. A traveller looks outside as clouds begin to break. Faint moonlight appears. Wet fields stretch beyond the fortress walls. Calm nighttime atmosphere. A detailed historical painting of a sleeping medieval castle community around midnight. The ruler rests in private chambers. Guards patrol the walls. Servants finish their work. Animals sleep in stables. And candlelight glows throughout the fortress. Authentic late 13th century Europe. a medieval castle corridor showing ordinary nighttime moments in 1277 Europe. Depicted as a realistic oil painting, a worker carries firewood, someone closes a wooden door, another prepares supplies, showing that small actions keep a fortress functioning. A peaceful medieval servant's room inside a European castle during a rainy night. A tired worker rests after completing duties. Simple wooden furniture, folded clothing, candlelight, and stone walls create an authentic 13th century living space. Detailed historical painting style. A medieval castle interior showing personal objects left before sleep in the year 1277. A pair of leather shoes near a wooden door. Folded wool clothing on a chest. A small personal item beside a candle, revealing the human side of medieval life. Realistic oil painting. A cinematic historical oil painting of a European castle slowly fallen asleep after midnight in 1277. Fires burn lower. Fewer candles remain. Corridors become empty. Rain taps softly on stone roofs, and the fortress enters a peaceful nighttime rhythm. A medieval European fortress at night showing the relationship between people and their environment in the year 1277. The castle stands against fading storm clouds while servants, guards, and residents follow natural rhythms of darkness, rest, and preparation. Detailed oil painting style. An immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a royal castle in late 13th century Europe. The storm becomes gentle, candlelight flickers, quiet servants move through corridors, guards patrol softly, and the ancient stone fortress feels alive but peaceful. A realistic historical painting of a medieval sleeping area beginning inside a European castle around 1277. Thick wooden doors, heavy fabrics, simple beds, personal belongings, candles, and quiet corridors show how nobles and household members prepared for rest. A final atmospheric medieval oil painting of a European royal castle during the deepest hours of a stormy night in 1277. The fortress is nearly silent. Rain falls against stone walls, candles glow faintly, sleeping chambers await, and the ancient castle prepares for medieval rest. Authentic High Middle Ages style. A medieval European royal castle sleeping chamber in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A quiet room with a wooden bed covered in layered fabrics. A small candle on a wooden table. A storage chest. Stone walls. And soft shadows from candlelight. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A peaceful medieval bedroom inside a European castle during a stormy night in 1277 painted with realistic historical oil techniques. A noble sleeping chamber with thick stone walls, heavy blankets, wooden furniture, candles, and rain softly falling outside wooden shutters. Calm bedtime atmosphere. A detailed historical painting of a medieval bedchamber in late 13th century Europe. A large wooden bed with curtains and warm textiles stands against a stone wall. Candles glow softly. A chest holds clothing and valuables, showing the comfort and status of a royal household. A medieval traveller sitting beside a royal castle bed in the year 1277. Depicted as a realistic oil painting. The traveller observes layered blankets, wooden furniture, candles, and personal belongings while rain creates a gentle rhythm outside. Authentic High Middle Ages interior. A close-up historical oil painting of medieval bedding and textiles inside a European castle around 1277. Rich fabrics, wool blankets, embroidered covers, wooden bed frames, and handcrafted materials reveal the labour and wealth behind medieval comfort. A medieval textile workshop connected to a royal castle in 13th century Europe, painted as a detailed historical artwork. Workers spin thread, weave fabric, repair clothing, and create blankets that later decorate noble sleeping chambers, showing the craftsmanship behind medieval goods. A realistic medieval painting of a noble preparing for sleep inside a European castle during a rainy night in 1277. The person stores personal belongings in a wooden chest, adjusts the fireplace, lights a candle, and settles beneath layers of fabric. Authentic late medieval lifestyle. A medieval sleeping chamber showing traditional beliefs about bed arrangement and comfort in the year 1277 Europe. Depicted as a historical oil painting, a carefully positioned wooden bed, candles, protective objects, fabrics, and personal items create a realistic medieval nighttime setting. A peaceful medieval bedroom without modern technology in a European castle around 1277 painted with detailed oil brush strokes. No electric lights or screens, only candles, fireplace warmth, wooden furniture, thick fabrics, and stone walls creating a quiet atmosphere. A historical painting of medieval nighttime routines inside a royal castle. A person prepares for sleep by checking the fireplace, removing outer clothing, storing belongings, and resting beneath blankets while a storm continues outside. Authentic late 13th century European atmosphere. A medieval European castle interior during the deepest hours of night in 1277 painted as a calm historical oil artwork. Empty corridors, closed wooden doors, low candles, quiet sleeping chambers, and gentle rain create a peaceful fortress atmosphere. A detailed painting of medieval servants resting in simpler sleeping quarters around the year 1277. Small beds, plain blankets, wooden furniture, candles, and modest stone rooms show the daily life of workers inside a royal castle. Realistic high Middle Ages style. A medieval castle sleeping area showing the difference between noble and servant rooms in late 13th century Europe. A richly decorated chamber contrasts with a simpler workers' room, both containing beds, blankets, candles, and personal belongings. Historical oil painting style. A cinematic medieval painting of people sleeping inside a European fortress during a stormy night in 1277. Nobles rest in private chambers, servants sleep in simple rooms, guards patrol outside, and the entire castle shares the same rain and thunder. A medieval European castle bedroom with thunder passing through ancient stone walls, painted as a detailed historical oil artwork. A sleeping figure rests peacefully beneath heavy blankets. Candles flicker. Wooden shutters shake slightly from wind, creating a calm nighttime scene. A historical oil painting of ordinary medieval people dreaming inside a castle around 1277. A young noble, a worker, and a servant sleep in different rooms, showing that people of all social classes share the same human need for comfort and rest. A close-up medieval painting of personal objects beside a sleeping bed in a European castle. A repaired piece of clothing, worn blanket, small wooden box, candle, and simple belongings reveal the personal stories of people living in the year 1277. An immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a royal castle at midnight in late 13th century Europe. The fortress is almost asleep. Candles burn low, fires glow softly, Guards continue watching, and residents rest behind wooden doors while rain falls outside. A dramatic but peaceful medieval castle interior as the storm reaches its strongest moment in 1277 Europe. Painted in realistic oil style. Sleeping chambers remain warm and safe while thunder shakes the towers. Wind moves through corridors, and ancient stone walls endure the weather. A final atmospheric historical oil painting of a European medieval castle during the deepest night in the year 1277. Quiet sleeping chambers, candlelight, wooden beds, heavy fabrics, stone ceilings, gentle rain, and distant thunder create a relaxing High Middle Ages bedtime scene. A medieval European royal castle during the deepest part of a stormy night in the year 1277, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A quiet stone corridor with trembling candle flames, damp walls, wooden beams, and distant thunder echoing through the fortress. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A traveller standing in a medieval castle corridor during a powerful thunderstorm in 1277 Europe. Painted with realistic historical oil techniques. Cold draughts move through stone walls, candles flicker, rain strikes the roof. And the ancient fortress surrounds the figure with mystery and calm. A dramatic historical painting of a medieval castle courtyard during a midnight storm in late 13th century Europe. Stone buildings connected by walkways. Rainwater covering the ground. Torches glowing near entrances. Guards and servants moving through the fortress. Realistic oil painting style. A medieval European castle overlooking a storm-covered kingdom in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed oil painting. Dark clouds cover the landscape. Rain falls over villages and fields. Castle towers rise above the countryside, and candlelight glows from windows during the night. A close-up historical oil painting of a medieval traveller touching an ancient stone castle wall during a thunderstorm. The wall vibrates from distant thunder. Candlelight reflects on rough stone surfaces, showing centuries of storms endured by a 13th century fortress. A medieval European castle interior during a powerful storm at midnight. Painted as a realistic historical artwork. Guards listen carefully. Servants protect fireplaces. Nobles remain inside private rooms, and animals react in nearby stables, showing the entire fortress responding to the weather. A detailed painting of medieval castle architecture designed for survival in 1277 Europe. Stone towers, tiled roofs, drainage channels, storage rooms, and defensive walls withstand heavy rain and wind, showing the practical engineering of a High Middle Ages fortress. A medieval castle builder's perspective of a European fortress during a stormy night. Painted in historical oil painting style. Strong roofs, stone walls, drainage systems, and defensive structures work together against nature. Realistic late 13th century architecture. A medieval person watching lightning from a castle window in 1277 Europe. Depicted as a detailed historical painting. The figure looks across the dark sky with curiosity and concern. Wondering about the meaning of the storm, candlelight illuminating the stone chamber. A medieval castle guard resting between night duties during a stormy night, painted as a realistic oil artwork. The guard sits near a small fireplace warming hands. Chainmail armor nearby, listening for unusual sounds inside the ancient fortress. Authentic 13th century setting. A historical painting showing the quiet reality of medieval castle life during a storm, instead of battles. The scene shows routine maintenance, guards watching, servants working, fires burning, and people waiting patiently inside a European fortress in 1277. A medieval European castle during a storm with emphasis on ordinary human moments. Depicted as a detailed oil painting. A family rests inside, a servant completes a task, a guard stands watch, and rain falls outside, showing everyday life behind fortress walls. A cinematic medieval painting of a castle window covered with rain in the year 1277. Outside, the kingdom disappears into darkness and mist, while inside, candlelight illuminates a quiet chamber, creating a peaceful historical bedtime atmosphere. A medieval European noble household experiencing a stormy night in 1277, painted as a realistic historical oil artwork. The royal family waits indoors, unable to control the weather, surrounded by candles, stone walls, wooden furniture, and protective traditions. A detailed historical painting of medieval people combining practical solutions and beliefs during extreme weather. Castle residents store supplies, maintain fires, pray, and follow protective customs while a storm surrounds the fortress. Authentic late 13th century Europe. A medieval servant replacing burned-out candles inside a royal castle corridor during the late-night storm of 1277, painted with realistic oil brush strokes. The servant carries fresh candles through dark stone halls, showing the small duties that keep the castle alive. A medieval castle corridor filled with quiet nighttime responsibilities in Europe around 1277. Servants check fires, guards patrol entrances, workers prepare supplies, and candles burn low, revealing the repeated habits that maintain a fortress. Detailed historical painting style. A medieval household during a storm using protective objects and nighttime customs, depicted as a historical oil painting. A person keeps a small charm near a sleeping area. Candles glow, rain falls outside, showing medieval attempts to find comfort and security. An immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a European castle surviving a powerful storm in the year 1277. Thunder echoes through towers, rain covers stone walls, guards remain awake, servants continue duties, and the fortress slowly returns to silence. A final atmospheric historical oil painting of a medieval European castle before dawn in 1277. The storm fades into distant thunder. Candles burn low. Wet stone corridors lead toward morning light, and the ancient fortress rests after another night of survival. Authentic High Middle Ages style. A medieval European royal castle at dawn after a powerful storm in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. The first grey light appears over stone towers, wet rooftops shine with rain, clouds slowly separate, and the fortress begins to wake. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A peaceful medieval castle window overlooking a kingdom at sunrise in 1277 Europe, painted with realistic historical oil techniques. A traveller watches fields, forests, roads, and villages reappear from the darkness as morning light touches the wet landscapes. Detailed medieval artwork style. A panoramic historical painting of a European castle after a stormy night in the late 13th century. The fortress stands above wet fields and villages. Water reflects the early sunlight, Clouds fade across the sky, and the kingdom slowly returns to life. Realistic oil painting style. A medieval castle courtyard after a storm in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed oil painting. Puddles cover stone pathways, walls shine with moisture, workers inspect damage, servants carry supplies, and the fresh morning air fills the fortress. Authentic High Middle Ages setting. A realistic historical painting of medieval servants beginning their morning duties inside a European royal castle. Workers rebuild fires, prepare food, check supplies, and care for animals after a stormy night, showing the daily routines of the 13th century fortress. A medieval European castle kitchen at dawn in 1277 painted as a warm historical oil artwork. Servants prepare breakfast. Fresh bread is carried through stone corridors. Fireplaces burn again. Wooden tables are arranged. And morning activity returns after the storm. A detailed painting of medieval workers inspecting storm damage around a royal castle in late 13th century Europe. People clear water from pathways, repair wooden structures, check walls, and restore order after heavy rain. Realistic High Middle Ages atmosphere. A medieval messenger preparing to leave a castle gate after a stormy night in the year 1277 depicted as a historical oil painting. The messenger checks belongings. A horse stands on wet ground. The castle gate opens behind him, and morning light shines through clouds. A close-up historical painting of a medieval messenger carrying a protective charm before a journey in 1277 Europe. A small religious symbol or personal object hangs from clothing. The traveller prepares beside a horse, showing medieval beliefs and travel traditions. A cinematic medieval road scene from the year 1277 Europe. A messenger rides away from a royal castle across muddy roads after a storm. Wet fields surround the path. Distant villages appear under morning clouds. Realistic historical oil painting style. A medieval castle slowly awakening at dawn. Painted as a detailed historical artwork. Doors open. Servants walk through stone corridors. Fires are rebuilt. Voices return, and the fortress changes from a silent night world into a busy daytime home. A historical oil painting showing the transformation of a medieval great hall from night to morning in 1277. The same room that hosted a royal feast is now prepared for breakfast. Tables arranged, fireplaces glowing, servants working quietly. A medieval European castle showing signs of a passing storm, depicted as a realistic oil painting, fallen branches, wet stones, flowing water, damaged wooden structures, and workers repairing the fortress reveal nature's power and human resilience. A detailed historical painting of medieval castle maintenance in the year 1277. Craftsmen repair stone walls, workers inspect roofs, servants manage supplies, and guards oversee the fortress, showing that castles required constant care and adaptation. A medieval European fortress at sunrise showing the relationship between architecture and human effort. Painted in classical oil painting style. Tall towers stand strong while workers maintain walls, roofs, fires, and supplies after a storm. A peaceful medieval castle corridor during early morning in 1277 Europe, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. Candlelight fades as sunlight enters through windows. Servants replace candles. Shadows disappear, and the fortress returns to daytime life. A medieval traveller walking through a castle after sunrise, painted as a realistic historical artwork. The traveller passes quiet corridors becoming active again. hears footsteps and voices returning. While sunlight illuminates ancient stone walls after the storm, an immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a European castle after a storm in the year 1277. The night of thunder has ended. The kingdom wakes. Workers return to their duties, and the fortress stands peacefully beneath a brightening sky. A cinematic historical oil painting of a medieval castle morning landscape in late 13th century Europe. The fortress overlooks villages, roads, farms, and forests after rainfall, showing the castle as part of a larger living kingdom. Realistic High Middle Ages style. A final atmospheric medieval painting of a royal castle at sunrise in 1277 Europe. Pale sunlight touches wet fields. Clouds separate above ancient towers. Villagers and workers begin another day, and the fortress remains standing after the storm. Detailed historical oil painting style. A medieval European royal castle seen from outside after a storm in the year 1277, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller walks along a wet countryside road. Morning mist covers the fields. Puddles reflect sunlight, and the ancient stone fortress rises behind him. Authentic late 13th century High Middle Ages atmosphere. A peaceful medieval landscape in Europe around 1277 after a night storm, painted with realistic historical oil techniques. A castle stands above green fields, villages, farms, and muddy roads, while the first morning sunlight touches wet grass and distant hills. Detailed medieval artwork style. A medieval traveller leaving a royal castle gate at dawn in the year 1277 depicted as a historical oil painting. The traveller walks onto a muddy road. Castle towers glow behind him. Mist rises over fields, and villagers begin their morning routines. Authentic High Middle Ages setting. A detailed painting of a medieval village near a European castle in late 13th century Europe. Wooden houses, small chimneys releasing smoke, animals in shelters, villagers carrying water, repairing fences, and preparing tools create a realistic morning scene after a storm. A medieval European farming landscape in 1277 painted as a realistic historical oil artwork. Farmers inspect wet fields after heavy rain. Crops grow in long patterns, animals are cared for, and a distant castle overlooks the countryside, showing agricultural life in the High Middle Ages. A historical painting of medieval farmers beginning work after a stormy night. Villagers in 13th century Europe repair tools, check crops, care for animals, and walk through muddy fields under fresh morning light. Authentic rural life atmosphere. A medieval village gathering place near a well in 1277 Europe. Depicted as a detailed oil painting, villagers exchange news, settle disagreements, and share information near wooden buildings and a stone well, showing how communities communicated before modern technology. A medieval European village market opening in the morning after a storm, painted with realistic historical oil brush strokes. Wooden stalls appear. Traders arrange baskets of goods. Farmers exchange products, and villagers discuss weather and recent events. Authentic late 13th century atmosphere. A bustling medieval market near a royal castle in the year 1277, depicted as a detailed historical painting. Farmers sell produce. Craftsmen display handmade tools. Merchants organize goods. Travellers arrive, and villagers gather in a lively marketplace. A close-up medieval market stall in 13th century Europe, painted as a realistic oil artwork, handmade pottery, woven cloth, wooden tools, baskets, and crafted goods are displayed while artisans explain their work, showing the skill of medieval craftsmen. A medieval artisan workshop in a European village around 1277 depicted as a historical oil painting. A craftsman creates pottery and tools by hand, surrounded by wooden equipment, materials, and finished products, showing the importance of skilled workers in medieval society. A detailed historical painting of medieval craftsmen and traders connected to a royal castle economy. Blacksmiths, weavers, potters, and merchants work near village roads while the castle stands in the distance, showing how ordinary people supported the medieval world. A medieval traveller arriving at a European village market after a long journey in 1277, painted as a realistic historical artwork. The traveller wears a weathered cloak, carries belongings, and speaks with villagers while muddy roads and wooden carts surround the scene. A medieval European road connecting castle, villages, and markets in the year 1277 depicted as a detailed oil painting. Merchants with carts, farmers carrying supplies, messengers on horseback, and travellers move through the countryside after rainfall. A historical oil painting showing the relationship between a medieval castle and the surrounding community. The fortress overlooks farms, villages, roads, and markets while villagers work below, illustrating how rulers and ordinary people depended on each other in late 13th century Europe. A medieval village community gathering beside a road in 1277 Europe, painted as a realistic historical scene. Villagers discuss local matters, share news, raise families, and solve problems together, showing the human side of medieval rural life. A cinematic medieval landscape, painting of a castle and countryside after a storm, wet forests, shining leaves, farms, villages, roads, and the stone fortress create a connected living world in late 13th century Europe. Detailed oil painting style. A peaceful medieval morning in a European village after a stormy night in the year 1277 depicted as a historical oil painting. Families prepare breakfast. Workers return to familiar tasks. Markets begin opening, and sunlight shines through wet trees. A traveller looking back at a medieval castle from the countryside in 1277, painted with realistic historical oil techniques. The fortress tower appears smaller in the distance, surrounded by villages and farms, showing that the true story of the castle extends beyond its walls. A final atmospheric historical painting of a medieval European kingdom morning in 1277. A royal castle stands above a living landscape of farmers, markets, roads, craftsmen, and villages after a storm, showing the connection between the fortress and thousands of everyday lives. Authentic, high Middle Ages oil painting style. A medieval European royal castle returning to life at sunrise in the year 1277, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller approaches the wet stone fortress after a storm. Sunlight breaks through clouds. Servants enter the gates, and the castle feels like a living home rather than a distant stronghold. Authentic high Middle Ages atmosphere. A peaceful medieval castle courtyard in the morning after a storm, painted with realistic historical oil techniques. Servants open wooden doors, rebuild fires, carry supplies, and begin daily tasks while wet stones reflect the sunlight. showing a 13th century European fortress awakening. A detailed historical painting of a medieval castle gate at dawn in 1277 Europe. Workers and servants pass through the entrance. Wooden carts move across wet ground. Castle walls shine after rainfall, and the first light of day illuminates the ancient fortress. A medieval European great hall in daylight after a royal feast, depicted as a realistic oil painting. Servants clean wooden tables, remove dishes, organize furniture, and prepare the room for another day, showing how a castle changes from celebration to daily work. A historical oil painting of a medieval great hall transformation from night to morning in the year 1277. The same room that hosted music and feasting now contains workers cleaning tables, sunlight entering through windows, and the quiet rhythm of castle life returning. A close-up medieval painting of a carved wooden chest inside a European castle around 1277. The chest contains personal household items and memories. Decorated wood shows craftsmanship. Candlelight and morning sunlight reveal the emotional value of ordinary medieval possessions. A medieval servant repairing a piece of fabric near a castle doorway in late 13th century Europe. Painted as a detailed historical oil artwork, the worker carefully patches clothing by hand, showing medieval traditions of repair, patience, and careful use of resources. A realistic medieval painting of everyday object maintenance inside a royal castle in 1277. Servants repair clothing, restore furniture, fix tools, and care for household items, showing the importance of craftsmanship and reuse in high Middle Ages society. A medieval European castle interior during the morning after a storm, depicted as a historical oil painting. Royal chambers glow with sunlight. The chapel appears peaceful, and familiar corridors that were mysterious at night now feel warm and alive. A cinematic medieval castle scene showing the contrast between night and sunrise in 1277 Europe. The same stone halls that held shadows and storms now contain sunlight, workers, conversations, and daily activities. Realistic historical painting style. A detailed historical painting of medieval workers repairing storm damage inside a castle courtyard. A craftsman fixes damaged structures, another worker checks equipment, and a messenger prepares to leave, showing the practical routines of a 13th century fortress. A medieval European castle courtyard filled with morning activity after heavy rain. In the year 1277, workers repair walls, servants carry supplies, horses stand nearby, puddles reflect sunlight, and the fortress begins another day. Detailed oil painting style. A panoramic historical oil painting of a medieval castle overlooking a bright countryside morning. Fields, roads, villages, and forests surround the fortress after a storm, showing the connection between the castle and the wider kingdom in late 13th century Europe. A medieval traveller standing on a castle wall at sunrise in 1277 Europe, painted as a realistic historical artwork. The traveller looks over bright fields and villages, remembering the stormy night, while the fortress below returns to normal life. A medieval European castle community scene from the year 1277 depicted as a detailed oil painting. The king's household, servants, guards, villagers, merchants, and travellers all appear together, showing the many lives connected to the fortress. A historical painting of a medieval castle as a living home rather than only a fortress. Stone walls, kitchens, workshops, courtyards, workers, families, and daily routines appear together, showing the human side of a late 13th century European castle. A peaceful medieval morning scene in a European village and castle landscape after a storm. Farmers return to fields, roads become active, villagers begin work, and the castle watches over the countryside. Realistic high Middle Ages oil painting style. An immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a royal castle after a stormy night in 1277. Warm sunlight replaces candlelight. Fires burn. Workers move through halls, and the fortress carries memories of rain, thunder, and human stories. Detailed historical artwork. A cinematic final view of a medieval European castle in the morning of the year 1277. The storm has disappeared. The sun rises above towers. Servants work. Villages awaken. And the fortress stands as a symbol of countless lives and generations. Realistic oil painting style. A final atmospheric historical oil painting of a traveller preparing to leave a medieval castle after experiencing a stormy night in 1277. The fortress glows in morning light behind him. Workers continue their routines, and memories of fires, rain, thunder, and medieval life remain. Authentic High Middle Ages style. A medieval European royal castle at sunrise in the year 1277, depicted as a detailed historical oil painting. A traveller stands near the castle gates for the final moment, looking at the familiar stone fortress beneath a soft blue sky. Morning light touching the towers, peaceful High Middle Ages atmosphere. A medieval castle that feels like a home rather than a fortress, painted as a realistic historical oil artwork. The scene shows warm windows, stone walls, courtyards, workers beginning the day, and a peaceful morning after a storm in late 13th century Europe. A detailed historical painting of a European castle courtyard after a storm in 1277. Servants work, fires burn, doors open, and daily routines return while wet stones reflect the morning sunlight, showing a living medieval community inside the fortress. A medieval traveller walking along the outer path of a royal castle in the year 1277 depicted in realistic oil painting style. The traveller observes tall towers, stone walls, green fields, and the peaceful landscape after a night of rain and thunder. A panoramic medieval European landscape painting from the late 13th century. A royal castle stands above villages, farms, and roads under a bright morning sky, showing the fortress as a centre of administration, community, and medieval life. A historical oil painting of a medieval castle gatehouse in 1277 Europe. Travellers, merchants, workers, and families pass through the entrance carrying different stories, with guards watching the gates and the stone fortress rising behind them. A medieval traveller arriving at a European castle during a storm centuries ago, painted as a detailed historical artwork. A tired traveller stands before the gate hoping for shelter, warmth, and protection, while rain falls over the ancient fortress walls. A peaceful medieval hospitality scene in a European castle around 1277 depicted as a realistic oil painting. Travellers receive shelter, food, and warmth near a fireplace after a difficult journey, showing the importance of safety and welcome in the Middle Ages. A cinematic medieval castle interior in the morning after a storm, painted with historical oil techniques. The traveller walks familiar corridors passing the Great Hall, chapel, and service areas, recognising the places explored during the night journey. A detailed painting of a medieval Great Hall in daylight around the year 1277. Wooden tables are prepared for another meal. The fireplace burns steadily. Servants organize the room, and the castle begins another day of activity. A medieval European castle chapel illuminated by morning sunlight, depicted as a peaceful historical oil painting. Light enters through stone windows, touches the floor, and reveals wooden benches and religious decorations inside the quiet, sacred space. A realistic historical painting of medieval castle workers continuing their duties without ceremony in 1277 Europe. Servants prepare supplies, repair objects, clean rooms, and maintain the fortress, showing the hidden labour behind medieval life. A medieval household record room inside a European castle around 1277 painted as a detailed oil artwork. Scribes record supplies, payments, craftspeople, and household responsibilities on parchment, revealing the many people who supported the fortress. A historical oil painting showing the complexity of medieval castle life. This scene combines rulers, servants, guards, craftsmen, and villagers, showing that a castle could be both powerful and demanding, protective and uncomfortable in late 13th century Europe. A medieval traveller leaving a royal castle on a peaceful morning in 1277, depicted as a realistic historical painting. The traveller walks toward a countryside road while looking back at the towers, mist, fields, and fortress that became a place of memories, a dramatic but peaceful medieval castle landscape after a storm, painted in detailed oil painting style. The fortress stands beneath the changing sky. Wet fields shine, villages sleep peacefully, and the ancient stone walls hold centuries of human stories. A nostalgic medieval painting of a traveller remembering a stormy night inside a European castle. Images of candlelit halls, rain against stone walls, fireplace warmth, guards on towers, and quiet conversations blend into a dreamlike historical scene. An immersive medieval bedtime history painting of a European castle fading into the distance in morning mist. Year 1277. A traveller walks away on a quiet road while the fortress towers become smaller beneath the peaceful sky. Calm and timeless atmosphere. A final cinematic medieval oil painting of a royal castle beneath the stars after a storm. Silent fields surround the fortress. Sleeping villages rest nearby. Stone walls hold centuries of stories, and the ancient castle watches peacefully under the night sky. A relaxing medieval dream scene from the year 1277 depicted as a soft historical oil painting. A peaceful castle rests beneath a calm sky. Gentle rain memories remain. Distant thunder fades away. Candlelight glows softly, and the journey ends in a timeless medieval dream atmosphere